So since it's been a while, let's go back to the central theme of this letter that Paul wrote to Timothy. It's found in chapter 3, verse 14 through 16. And I'll just read it so it comes back to our attention. 1 Timothy 3:14 starts, "Although I hope to come to you soon," this is Paul, "I'm writing you these instructions so that, if I'm delayed, you will know how people ought to conduct themselves in God's household, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and foundation of the truth." Remember that? So Paul is saying, you, church, are the family of God. You're God's household. And so he's writing this letter to Timothy, who's overseeing the church, to instruct them in practical ways. How do you conduct yourself together? And then how do you conduct yourself outside in the watching world around you? But he doesn't stop there, and it's really important that we continue on. Verse 16, "Beyond all question, the mystery from which true godliness springs is great. He, Jesus, appeared in the flesh, was vindicated by the Spirit, was seen by angels, was preached among the nations, was believed on in the world, was taken up in glory." And that second part is just as important as the first part, because the first part about God's family is informed by the second part, which is the gospel, the good news of Jesus. That Jesus came down and united with us, assumed humanity, and then brought us back up, and in that process made us the family of God. It's only possible because of Jesus. Jesus came and made us the household of God. That's the only way, right? We're not the household of God because we signed some membership list or we said, yeah, we believe in this. That doesn't make us the family of God. What makes us the family of God is that Jesus found us and united us to himself, and we, by faith, trust in him. And by that, we have now entered into not just salvation, but we've entered into his family. That's only because of Jesus, right? Okay? So, Jesus designed his church to be a family in a way that bears witness to the gospel. How? Look at us. What possible reason should we be together in this place? Just take a look. Our demographics are all over the place. I love it when there's a guest speaker who comes and he speaks to our church, and then he debriefs with me and he said, I tried to describe your church to someone else, and I could not put it together. It's not, it's not a young church, it's not an old church, it's not a, a rich church or a poor church, it's not an Asian church or a white church. It's not any of those things. I don't know what to call you. Exactly. Why? Because only Jesus could put us together like this. Only Jesus, right? So how does this family then bear witness to this gospel so that a watching world can look at us and go, what on earth is possibly uniting you? And then the answer should be readily available. It's Jesus. It's Jesus. All right? So this is a family that's not formed by ethnicity. It's not formed by having, common interests. We like the same music or read the same books or wear the same kind of clothes. No, it's none of those things. It's Jesus. So now Paul is saying, if that's true, then how you conduct yourself, how you act, how you speak, as the family of God should bear witness to the gospel of Jesus. All right? Ooh, now you got to think. You got to think, how do I act? How do I speak when I am part of this family? So in verses 1 through 16, I've split it up in my notes in three ways. There's Paul giving us a principle, a policy, and presence. Okay, so I'm just going to walk through those three things: principle, policy, and presence. The principle is treat church as family. Treat church as family. The church is to be like an extended family to everyone. To everyone. And then Paul, when you see the way he starts chapter 5, he goes through the different kinds of people that you will have in your family. So he says, before you interact with somebody in the church, ask yourself, how old are they? Right? How old are they? So he starts with the older men, right? He says, treat older men as fathers. And then if there's a younger man, treat the younger man as brothers. If there's an older woman, treat her as a mother. If there's a younger woman, treat her as a sister. Family, all family. So a couple of examples. I won't walk through each of those, but I do want to walk through a couple of them. Older men, okay? Let's talk about that. As a young man, when I was in my 20s, it was very easy to get caught up in my own hype, in my own self-importance. Like I was immortal. I was going to live forever. You know, when you're 20, you kind of think that way. You don't think about your mortality that way. But that can also impact the way you talk to older men. Because I remember times when I was in my 20s and I would talk to my dad and I would kind of speak kind of condescendingly because I thought my theology was better. I thought my way of life was better. I just thought I was better, you know, because I was younger. And Paul is saying, and he's told Timothy's a young man. Timothy has said, there are false teachers in the church. You've got to address that. But for older men who are not false teachers, treat them as fathers. And I've found this to be really helpful in my own capacity as a pastor here. Because there have been a couple of times when I've had to address older men in the church for things they've said that were bad, basically. Not good, not Christ-like. But when I've done that, I have found it very helpful to consider their age. All right? Consider their age. When you consider the age of an older man, then you consider the lifespan of hardships, the lifespan of experiences, and you start to understand a little bit of the journey it takes to become an older man. It's a long, circuitous journey. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, and sometimes the things that get said by older men come out of some pain, come out of hard places. And so it's important to understand that. So I've had conversations with a couple that were very helpful when I had to address behavior. But I would start by saying something like, I've looked at you and I've considered your wisdom and your experiences over time, and I really do look at you as a father figure in my life. You are. There's things about your faith that I admire. There's things about how you serve that I really admire. But if I were to think of you as I think of my own earthly father, and I think of what you just said to that person, I would be really disappointed with my father. I would feel like my father let me down by saying those kinds of things, right? By saying that, it's family. It's family now. And being in family allows me then to say, well, here's what you said. That was wrong and harsh. But now I'm talking to him like I'm his son, who wants him to be a good father, you know? And so that's how we're to talk. That's how he says, don't rebuke them harshly, but treat them gently. Exhort them as if you were your father, right? So that's an example of that. When it comes to the younger women, okay, that's my second example. We'll talk about that. It says here, treat the younger women as sisters with absolute purity. With absolute purity. Here's an example. 2 teenage boys sitting outside of school, having lunch together out in the field. One beautiful young lady approaches and waves to one of the boys, and the boy then walks up to this young, beautiful, attractive young teenage girl and talks to her for about 10 seconds, kind of no expression or emotion, and then walks right back to his friend. And his friend is about to ask him, who was that? But before he can ask that question, another young lady, not as beautiful, plain, pretty, but not as beautiful, right? Comes up and waves. Then the other friend here looks at her and his face lights up. His eyes open, he skips almost to go see her, and they spend about a minute or so talking, and he's lighting up, and he's moving, and all of this, and then goodbye. And then he comes back, sits next to his friend. And his friend was now ready to ask his question. Who was that? Now, the friend is actually thinking, well, about the last person he just saw. Well, that's Jane. She's in our science class, and I kind of like her, right? And then the other friend is like, no, I know that's Jane. Who's the first girl? She's hot. And then he says, dude, that's my sister. Right? When you see a younger woman as your sister, you treat her with utmost respect. You're protecting her. You're caring for her, right? She's not someone that you're trying to get something from. You're actually there to bless her. That's what a good brother does, right? So treat the younger women as sisters, as family. And it changes the way that you interact with somebody, right? It changes it. Now you see them as someone who's just made in the image of God and worthy of your respect and care and protection. All right? Make sense? So, can we do that in the family of God? Treat the church as a family. Treat the church as a family. Another practical example that we get to do just Sunday to Sunday, when you hear someone share a prayer request, right? Think of them as that's your brother or sister sharing a prayer request, right? Not just somebody, but a brother or sister. What do you do then? What you do then is after service, you go to that person, you say, hey, I heard what you said. I'll be praying for you this week. And then if there's anything I can do, then let me know, right? That's what you do if that's a brother or sister. And then what you do is you pray that week, and then you go back to them the next Sunday and you say, hey, any update? What's going on? You know, have you seen God answer that prayer? Or is there anything I can do now? Anything different, right? Because that's what you do for a brother or a sister. You keep following through, right? You don't just talk about, I mean, we could talk about the Niners, and that's fine, but especially after yesterday. But, what we really ought to be talking about is how can I be a good brother to you? How can I be a good sister to you? Or how can I be a father to you? Or a mother to you? Or a good son to you? Or a good daughter to you? That's how we ought to conduct ourselves in the household of God. When a watching world sees that kind of love and interaction as a family between people who should otherwise have no connection, when they see that, then they have to ask, where do you get that from, right? Where do you get that kind of love? That's the point Paul is trying to make. When we love that way, that's what Jesus said. When you love one another, they will know you're my disciples by your love for one another. That's what now Paul is just fleshing that out. Now, in this paradigm of age, there's also another paradigm Paul doesn't mention, but it's important to note. There are also differences in singles and marrieds in the family of God. You've got single people, you've got married people. There's a lot of single people in this room right now, right? Young, old, there's a lot of singles here. And it's important to note that singles need to also feel part of the family. We as the church are extended family for single people. And one of the things we have to avoid, and especially as a married person who does remember being single, right? And was single for a while. And I remember what it felt like. Sometimes in the church, what we do is we elevate marriage way up here. And, we have ceremonies for marriage, right? When they have a ceremony, we actually celebrate them. But we don't do that for single people. So what does that do? We kind of make marriage as this thing to shoot for, right? This is the goal. And it's not. It's not the goal. But single people have a calling and a vocation just as much as married people have as well. A calling and a vocation. And it's full. And we ought to honor that and give place for that. It's really important. We who are married, we have to think of ourselves as extended family, right? Who are not the people who have arrived. No, we are just people who celebrate the diversity we have in the family of God, where we have singles, we have marrieds, and everyone has something to offer. So we don't just treat single people as the ones who can babysit our kids. Can I get an amen from any single people, all right? Right? That's not what they're here for. They are here to be people who can also offer us something. I remember as a single person, I was a single pastor and I gave a series on marriage. I preached on marriage, right? And I knew what people were thinking at the time. It's like, what does a single guy have to say about marriage, right? I knew that. And then, years later, I would hear from, one of those married husbands, and he would say, I remember that series. I said to myself exactly that. I said, what does he have to say about my marriage? But here's the truth. If I go back to that marriage series and I listen to everything I said, it's all true. It's all true. And the truth is, sometimes single people have a window on married people that is actually the most objective view. Because we married people, we get a little bit kind of biased. We get a little insular about who we are and how we live and all of that. And we lose objectivity. Sometimes a single person can look at a married person talk and they go, I wonder why she was that harsh with him. Or I wonder why he was talking in that tone with her. The married people, sometimes they don't even know they're doing it, but it's a single person who can see it. We married people need to receive that. So invite single people into your home and just give them permission to say whatever it is they see. It would make us better for it, all right? That's what family does. Family makes everyone better. Do you believe that? We make each other better. Whether we're single, whether we're married, we make each other better. That's important. Okay. Now, I should say this. Single people don't just kind of go in and, barrage with feedback, right? Have a little compassion, right? Have a little compassion as you give that. And another, don't just side with one of the married people. You don't want to triangulate that way, right? So, okay. We can talk more about that later. All right, so that's the principle involved. The second thing is there's this policy that Paul is now going to give to Timothy. And the policy is basically this: care for widows in real need. Care for widows in real need. Now, what Paul does here is he's not giving a general, universal statement about how all of us should treat all widows all the time. What Paul is doing is he's a pastor. He's acting as a pastor who's looking at the people in the church, and he's saying, I know these people, and I know these people. There's these widows who are real widows in real need, and then there's these widows who are not widows in real need. And he knows them. So he's speaking in particular ways to this group of people. So we want to avoid just making a general policy out of this, and we want to just draw out what's the principle from this, okay? So care for widows in real need. The Bible has always talked about God's heart for widows. From the Old Testament to Jesus on the cross, when he's looking at his own mother, who's a widow and is about to lose her son. Even while he's hanging in pain on the cross, he says, John, take care of my mother, right? Take care of her. She's going to be a widow who's not going to have anybody. And so even on the cross, Jesus is caring for the widow Mary. Now, back in that time, widows, there was no Social Security, there's no welfare, there's no Medi-Cal, there's no Medicare, there's none of those social services. There's no food stamps, there's nothing for widows. So widows were pretty much vulnerable at that time, very vulnerable. And if you didn't have someone caring for you, then you were going to be in really bad shape. And so what is a good example of a widow? You remember Anna in the temple? Anna in the temple is a wonderful example of somebody who just served the Lord, prayed, and day and night looked to God for provision. And that's the kind of person that Paul says, those are the people that you care for. But let's take a look at that more closely. Verse 4. Verse 4 says, but if a widow has children or grandchildren, these should learn, first of all, to put their religion into practice by caring for their own family and so repaying their parents and grandparents, for this is pleasing to God. So if a mom or a widow has kids and grandkids who have means to provide, they should provide. And I love the way that Paul says it. These kids need to repay the debt. I was a little excited about that when I was reading that. I was looking at like my own daughters, Cadence and Caroline. I was going, one day you're going to repay this debt because, man, we are paying a lot for you. And it's right to think that. It's right to think that one day these children, I'm going to invest and give and give and give. But one day they're going to return the favor. They're going to repay that debt back to us. And they should. Paul is saying they should. They should. Because if a widow has kids who can provide for them, but they don't, that's bad news. If those kids think, well, they have the church, Paul is saying the church is not a welfare system. That's not what the church is. The church is primarily for the propagation of the gospel. That's where our funds should go. Our funds should support our gospel ministry. That's what we should be supporting. We don't want to drain the coffers of the church on widows who don't actually need the help because they've got family who can help, right? And that's talking about believing children. Believing children, believing grandchildren should take care of their widowed mothers, their widowed grandmothers, okay? That's a policy that he's saying. Super sobering word in verse 8. Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Wow. Think of that. He's not saying if you deny the deity of Jesus, you have denied the faith. He's not saying that, right? He's not saying if you're living an immoral life or anything like that, you've denied the faith. He's saying if you don't take care of your mama and your grandma, and you have the means to do it, you've denied the faith. This is why the connection between the family of God and the gospel of Jesus is there. If you really have received Jesus, and you've trusted in him as your Lord and Savior, then not only have you entered into eternal life, you've entered into the family of God. If you don't take care of your mama and your grandma, then you are denying the very blessing that Jesus has put into your life, but by giving you a new father and putting you in a new family. You see that? That's why he's saying you've denied your faith. Because you're forgetting the very thing that Jesus did by bringing you into a new family, right? So he's saying, no, those kids, they need to take care of their mamas and their grandmas, right? That's important. Verse 16, just to close this up, this is what Paul is reiterating again and again. He's saying, if any woman who's a believer has widows in her care, she should continue to help them and not let the church be burdened with them, so that the church can help those widows who are really in need. So you hear Paul repeating himself. Church, take care of widows. You ought to take care of widows. Remember James, the brother of Jesus, who said in chapter 1, pure religion is this, taking care of the orphan and the widow. That's pure religion. That's what Paul wants. But he's saying, look, that needs to begin with the family members, the children, the believing children need to put that into practice. Put your religion into practice. All right? Care for widows in real need. Now, there's this third part that I think is really important for us, and that is presence. Right? So we looked at the principle, treat the church as family. Then we looked at policy, care for widows in real need. So be discerning who's in real need, right? Thirdly, presence. And what this is Paul giving a kingdom vision for what it means to be single. When you're a single person, an unintentionally single person, by the way. It's not like you're trying to be single. You may be single and divorced. You might be single and widowed. You might be, right? But unintentionally single. The church needs to be able to Allow single people to have fully engaged, loving relationships. A robust vision. That's what Paul is giving to these single people. So when we see verse 9, no widow may be put on the list of widows unless she's over 60. Wow. That's old for back then. If you're thinking early church and lifespan and life expectancy, I mean, that's kind of like 85, 90 in our day. Like 60, wow, that's old. And again, this is not Paul giving a general, universal policy. This is what we ought to do today. He's just saying, I know you people, and I know the older widows, and I know the younger widows, and I know the ones who are about 60 and over. Those are the widows. Yeah, take care of them. Take care of them. And then he goes on. And look at this. He gives this wonderful vision of a robust single life. He says, and is well known for her good deeds in verse 10, such as bringing up children, so she's done that, but she's showing hospitality, washing the feet of the Lord's people, helping those in trouble, and devoting herself to all kinds of good deeds. That's a beautiful picture of a robust single life. Then he gives the contrast. Here's what it doesn't look like. As for younger widows, don't put them on such a list, right? So there's this list. Here's the list of the widows that we serve as a church. It's great that you have a list, right? We should have a list identifying the widows. But he's saying, okay, put those first ones on the list. This group, take them off the list. What's that group? For when their sensual desires overcome their dedication to Christ, they want to marry. Now, Paul's not saying that's a bad thing to get married. If you're a single widow, he's not saying that. And he's going to show us that. But he's saying for these younger widows who looked at how the church serves these older widows, don't let them just say, hey, I like this kind of welfare system that we've got, and I'll just devote myself to Jesus and stay single. And the church will take care of me. And that's Paul saying, no way. Because he knows these single widows, what these single widows are doing. So he's saying directly about them. He says this, what happens is they say that, and then all of a sudden they see, this guy who's sitting in the next pew over, and he's kind of good looking, and all of a sudden they're taking back their pledge about being single, and now, I wonder how tall he is, All of that is starting to happen. Then they want to get married, all right? So then he says, thus they bring judgment on themselves because they've broken their first pledge. Besides, they get into the habit of being idle and going about from house to house. And not only do they become idlers, but also busybodies who talk nonsense, saying things they ought not to. Right? That is the opposite vision of a single life. Remember the first vision. This is a woman who's fully engaged in relationships and loving people and serving people. So when you see a single woman or a single man who's living in this way, sometimes we kind of think, singles have a lot of time. Not this woman, not this person, not this single man. This person is living this robust life. And they may not wake up to somebody and say, I want to share my day with you, but they've got a roommate in the next room over, or they've got people in their workplace who they're investing in, or they're loving the people in their church, right? They're full of relationships and they're loving people. That's a robust, beautiful vision of a single person's life. It's not a single person who's just waiting to get married. No, it's a single person who's looking at every relationship in their life as an opportunity to manifest the love of Jesus in however way I can, right? So singleness is not just the season that you're trying to get past. Singleness is a calling and a vocation that is to be lived out fully, just as much as any other calling and vocation, right? So it's really important. So what Paul then says about these particular women, verse 14, here's his counsel. I counsel younger widows to marry, have children, manage their homes, right? I want them to get busy because they don't have a good vision of the kingdom life. They don't have it. They're not there. So for these particular single widows, they need to get married, they need to have kids, they need to manage their house. Because what they're doing with all their time is bad. They're gossiping, they're talking, they're being busybodies, right? Idleness. Idleness is the devil's playground, right? That's what he's worried about. So as a remedy, he's saying, look, we don't have time for discipleship right now. What they need to do is just get married. Whoa. Okay. That's how important it is. Now, Paul is not saying this as a general thing. In 1 Corinthians 7, he says, I wish more of you were single because you'd be fully devoted to Jesus. You'd be fully devoted to the gospel. So it's not Paul saying to every single person, you need to get married. No, he's not saying that. He's just saying that about these particular women. And we're going to see later on how false teachers have actually used these particular women to propagate their teaching, right? They've taken advantage of them. And so that's what he's really trying to say. But I hope we get that sense of what that beautiful vision of a single, unintentional single life can look like. It's not a role, it's not a season, it's presence. A single person's presence has a wonderful, beautiful influence on the church and on those around us. So I want to affirm that about you single folks. You have a wonderful presence here, and your presence is felt and known, and it is needed. It is needed. So I want you to think about just some reflections on this. If we think about how do we care for widows, it is important that we care for widows. When we think about the widows in our own church, I love, I'm gonna name, I don't know if she's on or not, but Carmen, when she lost Al, her husband of decades, 70 years, and she's in her 90s. Her family has really stepped up. Right now, her house has needed this major renovation because there was some flooding in there. It's her family who's stepping up and finding the contractors. It's her family that's supporting her while she's in the assisted living facility. It's her family that's really supporting her. So Carmen is never, ever, and she wouldn't do this at all. She's continually faithfully giving. She's continually serving. She's one of the faithful core on our Tuesday prayer team. She's giving, praying. She's doing what a robust single widow life should look like in the kingdom of God. I love that about Carmen. She's a great example. But she does need our care. She does need our attention. So how can we bless someone like Carmen? I also want us to think about our neighborhood around here. In the West Portal area, there are a tremendous amount of retired people and a lot of elderly people who live on their own. And I see them all the time because I'm over at Pete's on West Portal, and they come into Pete's and they find some friends who are part of the neighborhood and they're in that community, but then they go home and then they're on their own, right? Our posture as a church, if we're a gospel people, I understand that we would want them to hear the gospel and want them to know about Jesus. We want that as well. But if that's all we want for them, we just want to convert them, well, meanwhile, their unbelieving son or unbelieving cousin or whoever is the one who's coming and checking the roof and is the one who's making sure that they have groceries, and their unbelieving friends are the ones who are there caring for them. This is what we ought to be doing as well. We ought not just to be thinking, how do we share the gospel with people? We ought to accompany that with real care for those who are elderly. Pure religion is to care for the orphan and the widow. And so our gospel message needs to be accompanied by real family care. Now, by family care, there's family of God care. We ought to be doing that with one another. But we ought to be thinking about others who would be perspectives in the family of God and say, listen, I want you to experience the kind of love that Jesus has given to me, right? So we can do that for everyone in our neighborhood. Think about the people in your own neighborhoods who are widows, who are elderly, who are on their own, and they need help, they need care, right? Think about them, pray for them, find out some of their stories. Just sit down and listen. Listen to their stories. Oh, my word. When I used to work in assisted living, one of the best things about being an administrator was having an office where I had a chair, and that resident would come in and they would sit in that chair, and I would say, tell me your story. Wow. What a gift to them. Someone wants to hear my story, but what a gift to me. I learned so much just from the wisdom of how to be a parent, how to be a spouse. I learned so much, but then they have so much to offer me. I also have something to offer them where I can offer validation and respect and say, you know what, your story matters. It matters and you matter. Because we live in a culture that discards the elderly, right? If you don't have anything to offer on social media, if you're not producing anything, right? We make such a deal of people who produce stuff. And that means we discard people who have so much to offer, those who are older, and we ought to care for them. So, those are a couple of takeaways, just as we think through how are we caring for widows, but also single people, married people. Are we giving and offering space to truly live that robust life? Whether we're married people, can we offer a window for single people to come in and say, hey, here's what I see, and then be better for it, right? Can we be the extended family for single people who can say, yes, we are part of this family, right? Single people, can you truly see yourself as somebody who's got a robust life of relationships and opportunities to serve that are full of relationships, right? Because remember the opposite of that. The opposite was that woman who was just self-indulgent, right? And sometimes single people, that's a big trap. I know it was for me when I was a single person. I would just kind of curate my life around my own preferences, my own desires, my own wants. And I would pick the people who fit my wants and my own preferences and hang out with the people who like the same books and listen to the same music and all of that. All of that is just still all about me. What I ought to be doing is saying, it's not about my preferences. How can I lay down my preferences to meet the needs of someone else? That's a single's life. And if you think married life is about two people who have everything in common and share the same preferences, that's not it at all. Married people, we're always laying down ourselves and our own preferences for the preferences of the other. We're doing that all the time. I mean, when I got married to Tricia, I pulled her out of a city that she loved, right? She was down in Orange County, and she had a great church, and she had friends, and all of that. And from the get-go, she was denying her own preferences to be with me, right? That's what marriage is. Marriage is always laying down yourselves for each other. I'm still trying to get her to lay down her preferences on sports teams, but I'm not sure. The Lord's going to have to, you can pray for Tricia on that. The Lord would change her heart that way, right? But marriage is that. That's what marriage is, all right? So single people, I don't know if you had any illusions that that's what marriage is about. Everyone having everything in common. No, it's self-denial. Single people, you get to practice that now. Practice self-denial for the sake of relating with those who are different than you so that you can be a blessing. Be a blessing, right? So much to say about this, but we'll end there. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you. Thank you for the privilege, the immense blessing it is to be part of your family. And in your family, there are rules and values that just make life so full. And we're grateful for that. Thank you for my brothers and sisters here, my fathers, my mothers, my sons, my daughters. Thank you. Thank you, Father, that I get to be part of this family, a family that goes across the globe. But Lord, we pray that you would help us to practice being the family of God here together so that a watching world will have to question, will have to say, what is the reason that we're together like this, that we love one another like this? And we can be ready to give the answer, Jesus. So, Lord Jesus, as we come to the table, remind us, Lord, that at this table, this is a family table, a table in which you say everyone is welcome, everyone is accepted because of what you have done on the cross for us. Thank you. In Jesus, your name we pray. Amen.